Good morning, everyone. I'm Ethan Kibbe. We're breaking into programming this morning with a special report, a shooting at Erie High School. Let me start with the very latest, and then we'll take you through what we've learned. And that brings us to November. That's when I got my hands on that new resolution, the one that the auditor signed, approving those payments. We broke the story, and the fallout began. An overwhelming sense of mourning, one of grief, and one of questioning here in Buffalo as people ponder how this happened and what can be done to prevent it. Sit tight. Coming up on Erie News Now at 6, we're going to head back outside, and that's where we'll tell you what the heck these little purple pieces of plastic have to do with flooding in Mill Creek.
Here we have the police, shoulder to shoulder in State Street. And here we have the protesters. More bangs, more fireworks. Literally, figuratively, at the scene right now. As cleanup continued, crews were able to remove this smashed Kubota side-by-side ATV, crushed when a barn fell on top of it during the storm. But believe it or not, the ATV got off lucky. Behind me, you can see the remnants of that barn now burning, along with 600 bales of hay. You can see that there's a crack in the top of the sewer. That means when the sewer fills after a rain, water can start going anywhere and start destabilizing that ground above. And right above our heads is a cemetery.
Sir, just I got to put it to you this way. You understand how it's going to look when you will spend the money but won't justify it.
Absolutely.
Good evening. John gave you a weather report. Let me give you the weather report here in one word: lousy. For Umholtz, the sudden shutdown is far more than just a nuisance. Not only is her trash piling up as she tries to find another carrier, it's a financial problem as well. Just 3 weeks ago, she paid Raccoon Refuse $85 for 3 months of service. It's money she doesn't think she'll ever see again. Eva, good evening. We stepped inside, got a break from the rain, but we did not get a break from the water. Take a look at this. I'm standing inside a garage at the moment, but you would think I'm standing in a swimming pool. There's about 5 or 6 inches of water in here. And if you look over here, this is indicative of just how bad this flooding is in this garage here on Harper Drive in Mill Creek Township. This bin weighs about 40 pounds. It's full of camping equipment, but there is so much water in here that it is floating. I can move it around at will. Mike and Emily, we know a lot, and yet we know nothing. It's wacky, but that's where we stand at the moment. Let's talk about it in that all-important Senate race. About 66% of the data in here in Pennsylvania, 2/3 of the way. Right now, John Fetterman with about a 2 percentage point lead. And you say, all right, well, that looks pretty good for John Fetterman. Maybe not so much. Let's look at some of these key bellwether counties. We start with our favorite bellwether county, Erie County. And you can see it's about a 2% gap here with about 85,000 votes in. Only half of the mail-in ballots, though, are in. That's going to boost Fetterman up, but we're also waiting on precinct data, which is going to bring Oz up. And Erie County is likely to end up looking like Northampton County. Look at how close this is, 0.1%. There's a reason we talked about this county all night. This county and this county, Erie County, Northampton County, are the 2 best bellwether counties in the state. And this could be how we end up looking statewide before we're all said and done. Eva, good evening. We have breaking news tonight, the very latest. The shooting suspect still at large tonight, not in police custody, hours after the shooting earlier this morning. Police still looking for that person. The victim is in stable condition at UPMC Hammond. Now that we've brought you up to speed, here's how this all unfolded. It started just before 9:30, just to the right of these main doors, in a hallway just to the right of those doors. A student walked in with a gun and shot another student. A couple times. We're hearing upper leg, lower torso areas where that shooting happened, and it was a wild scene. Take a look at this as local police crews responded from all over the region. The suspect immediately fled. The victim left bleeding in the hallway, barely able to move. Eventually, he was taken to the hospital where, again, tonight he's in stable condition. But the school was immediately placed into lockdown, and it remained that way as officers swept the school, made sure that the scene was safe, and then slowly started releasing students out to the custody of their parents or out to waiting buses. A scary time. We talked with students, we talked with teachers, and with police officers as all of this unfolded. The students say they heard shots. Teacher yelled, "There's a gunman in the building." They slammed the door shut. Some students even jumped out of windows just to save themselves. And we talked to one student who did just that. Mike and Emily, Erie's sewer system is quite literally crumbling beneath our feet. We've talked with city officials. We've studied maps. We've poured over more than 3,600 work orders, learning the scope of this problem and what it means for you. But to truly understand it, there's only one thing to do, and that's to take a trip into the sewers themselves. On July 1st, disaster struck Erie's east side. A sewer collapsed, creating a 30-foot sinkhole at 5th and Wallace Streets, swallowing a chunk of the lumber yard at Frontier Lumber. It was a problem hundreds of years in the making, and one that could become more common as time moves on.
The City of Erie sewer system dates back into the 1800s, so I mean these pipes have been in the ground for a couple hundred years.
Those old sewers are all over the city, and piece by piece, they're falling apart. So we started digging, combing through thousands of work orders, learning where the sewers were failing and why.
This is dangerous for people that live in the city, because the sewers might run under your home. If that collapses, your home collapses, what's going to happen if you're sleeping in bed at the time or something like that?
But to truly understand the problem, you have to see it. So we did, examining 3 portions of stormwater runoff sewers all over the city. Near Garrison Run on Erie's east side, old brick and concrete sewers are still the norm. But after centuries of erosion, those sewers are falling apart, making the ground less safe.
So the water leaves the pipe and creates voids on the outside.
And then the more voids, the better the chance of a cave-in or ground caving in or the pipe caving in.
Right, it's because washing all the dirt on the outside of the pipe, and eventually it's going to cause a void or a cave-in up on the surface.
Cracks like those are all over some of the oldest pipes, and if those sections fail, the results could be catastrophic.
You can see that there's a crack in the top of the sewer. That means when the sewer fills after a rain, water can start going anywhere and start destabilizing that ground above. And right above our heads is a cemetery.
That sort of cave-in is exactly what happened in East Erie this summer. We toured that newly laid pipe, a repair that cost taxpayers $1.5 million.
So what happened that day?
There were some voids in the existing double tile, and the hydraulic pressure forced the water up into those voids underneath the soil, and the force of it actually pushed the basement, caused cracks in the basement of that house. That really could have been bad because the pressure from the pipe went up, buckled the floor up, and filled the basement up 5 foot of water, and the homeowners and the family were in the house at the time.
A life-threatening problem, and one the city had known about for years.
It's ironic, we had a meeting with the administration probably the 3rd week of June, and we identified 8 areas of concern. And subsequently, within the next 10 days, we suffered two catastrophic failures in this section of pipe.
Those areas of concern span the entire city, from the southeast side to the lower west side. The mayor's administration wants to spend more than $10 million to address the issues, including $5 million along Garrison Run near Frontier Lumber.
Once these start falling, it'll just be a domino effect.
The $10.5 million will fix the most important ones in the inner city that are over 100 years old and have never had any kind of maintenance done to them.
Officials say that money, combined with other state aid, could address the system's most urgent concerns. But even that is just a start. So the mayor's team is proposing a stormwater runoff fee, creating a fund for sewer maintenance, hoping to prevent future failures.
It's difficult to find a dedicated funding source. We're always reactive, but it'd be better to be proactive. It'd be less expensive in the long run if we had a dedicated funding source.
That fee, however, carries its own problems, costing taxpayers anywhere from $12 to $36 each year. For now, the sewers deteriorate, since repair work is yet to be approved. Workers say regardless of the final spending plan, some repairs need to be handled soon, because you might not see sewers, but it's hard to live without them.
An engineer just joked with us a while ago. It says, try to wake up without having a sewer. Try to wake up without having running water or being able to get rid of your wastewater. That would be a real problem.
Also tonight, though, Erie News Now investigates with an update this evening on a story that we broke back in November. Green Township supervisors in Erie County paid themselves and 7 other employees bonuses of $10,000 each using money from the American Rescue Plan.
And our Ethan Kibbe broke this story. He's been pursuing answers for months. And Ethan, what have you learned today?
Mike and Eva, good evening. When we first reported this story, we said the payments, although unpopular with many in Green Township, seemed legal, even if people didn't like them. But as we've hunted down answers, our investigation suggests those bonuses
might not be legal after all, and they might not be ethical either. So let's go to the storyteller and break down a timeline of events and the legal and ethical questions associated with them. This all starts last spring when supervisors during a meeting came up with their plan to spend the money, using it again on $10,000 bonuses for themselves and 7 employees. As first reported by the Erie Times-News, those paychecks hit this summer, but by October, supervisors realized they had a problem. They needed auditor approval to pay themselves, and they never got it. So what they did was they called up their auditors and said, we need to get this done before a federal filing deadline. We need you to sign off or we might lose the money. Well, after hearing from a township employee, auditors did sign off, but they never held a required public meeting to do it. Instead, this was done really by phone call. And that brings us to November. That's when I got my hands on that new resolution, the one that the auditors signed, approving those payments. We broke the story, and the fallout began. A day after, we filed a right-to-know request. And in that right-to-know request, we asked for, and this is a direct quote, any and all emails, interoffice memos, documents, and other written forms of communication related to the township's use of American Rescue Plan Act funding. The township asked for a 30-day extension, and after that, they told us this. The OOR, the Office of Open Records, does not possess records responsive to this request. In other words, they're saying they have nothing. No emails, no memos, no documents. They didn't even send us the resolutions that they passed to approve this spending. We're pretty certain documents exist. The township says they don't. In early January, we filed an appeal, and we're still playing through the legal process. But that leaves us with 3 main questions. First of all, did supervisors violate the second-class township code by paying themselves without auditor consent? Second, did Supervisor Natalie Zimmer violate the Pennsylvania Official and Public Employees Ethics Act by not abstaining from a vote that included a bonus for her husband? And third, are the bonuses valid because auditors never held a public meeting to approve them? We asked experts, we talked with local lawyers, and with the executive director of the State Ethics Commission. Now, he can't comment specifically on this case over the phone, and there's not a formal complaint filed, but he says in general, it's an ethical violation for public employees to take any action for private gain. They can't use their office to benefit themselves or an immediate family member. And if a public official has, they can be ordered to repay that money along with a fine for a total of up to 3 times the amount they gained. Now, we asked the supervisors and the solicitors to discuss this story with us. They've declined so far. We're still working to get those documents, and coming up on Erie News Now at 5:30, you'll hear from one of the auditors as he discusses how all of this happened. For now, though, Ethan Kibbe, Erie News Now.